What's up everybody, Gen X Dividend Investor here. In this video I tell you what my worst investing mistakes have been over the almost 30 years I've been investing. This is one of those videos where if you really listen carefully to it, you could dramatically change your investing life for the better. So if you appreciate content like this, then please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't yet, and click that bell notification. And please watch this entire video, as towards the end of it I'm going to tell you why I was in the hospital last week, something that is vitally important for everyone to hear. Okay, first a quick TLDR about me if you're new to my channel. I graduated from college in the 90s with a math and computer science degree and got my first job as a programmer at a small company. I had some great coworkers who influenced me to start investing, and I'm very thankful for them because my dad never liked stocks and in fact used to say that the stock market was like gambling. Now I've been investing for almost 3 decades and was able to retire in my 40s due to dividends, and I started my YouTube channel as a fun way to educate my kids on how their dad invested once they're old enough to care. I built up my retirement account to over $1 million just from small repeated investments that compounded for decades, even though I rarely max my annual contributions, which really shows you what the power of time in the market is all about. I also built up the taxable account to over $1 million, again through investing for a long time. I don't share all that to brag, but instead to highlight what I believe is achievable if you invest for decades. And regardless, having any portfolio is better than not having one. Now, one mistake I made when I first started investing was not educating myself enough. Like when I'd pick 401k funds at work, I ignored expense ratios and actually had no idea what they even were. You want to keep learning about finances your whole life, so congratulations for you for taking the time to watch videos like this one. I love learning about new stuff, and I recently found out something that really surprised me about Social Security. It came from a subscriber of mine named Tulsa Tom, who is also a Patreon aristocrat. Basically what he said was that if 2 people are married and both have Social Security payments, but one of them dies, then the remaining person doesn't get both payments. They basically just get the higher payment, or a percentage of it. Tom knows multiple folks that were from upper middle class, dual income households, where one of the income makers died and the remaining person couldn't afford losing the other person's Social Security income, and so unfortunately they're now struggling financially. Yikes, that really blows. Thank you, Tom, for bringing it to my attention. But there's some more nuance to it, but that's the essence of it, which I think royally sucks, and is yet another reason why you need to keep educating yourself to finances so that you can keep planning and managing things better. And it's another reason why dividends can be so key to a healthy financial future. Anyways, as I got more into investing, I founded an investment club/company in the late 90s with some friends, and we invested mostly in tech, but also had some more conservative stocks like Amgen. At the time I was working at a private company that was talking about going public, and we all dreamed about IPOing and becoming millionaires. But then the dot-com crash hit, the company I worked for went under, and my tech-heavy portfolio got destroyed. So a big investing mistake I had made was not diversifying my portfolio enough, aka I was overweight in the tech sector. Over the next 2 years I watched the S&P 500 drop over 40%, but my portfolio lost a lot more than that, due to my tech stocks taking it on the chin the hardest. I think a good strategy for your personal portfolio is to have an allocation of stocks and sectors that roughly align to the overall market. Let's take a look at the current sector weighting of VTI, which is an ETF that represents all US public companies. As of October 31st, 2022, we see that basic material stocks are 2.1% of all public US companies, consumer discretionary stocks are 14.3%, consumer staples are 5.8%, etc. Now, a criticism you might hear is that if you aim to build a portfolio that is like the market, then you'll probably just get average returns, so why not just buy an ETF? My response to that is sure, for most people it is smarter to just go with an inexpensive broad market ETF like VTI. However, I've always been way more motivated owning individual stocks, and that motivation has helped keep me investing, even when times were tough. Plus, with individual stocks I can optimize my buys and sells more to enhance my returns. All you gotta do though is invest in decent stuff for a long time, live frugally, and win. The reality is that most people don't invest, so if you invest at all then you're already ahead of the norm. Plus, many that do invest will chase speculative hype stuff, which tends to lose big, which then leads to lots of people quitting investing altogether. Like the people who just lost a ton on FTX probably aren't keen to keep investing. Chasing hype was another big investing mistake I made. At the time, the internet was just being born, and lots of us were excited about its potential to change the world. Back then, if a company just added the word web or internet or .com to their branding, then their stock would usually shoot up. I stopped caring too much about seeing good revenue numbers and profits and such, and instead was often enamored with anything that sounded like a good company, not what actually was a good company. I mean, only boomers talked about moats and cash flows and stuff like that, right? Here I was investing in revolutionary tech. Man, was I naive. Now, some tech companies did make it, but most went belly up. And a good realization for you is that the dot-com period was eerily similar to a current crypto period. Like back then you'd see random tech companies that would spring into existence in IPO, and their stock would rocket up, and everyone wanted to grab a piece of it. It seemed so easy to win. But did those companies actually have a viable product? Not really. Do the new coins that are ICOing really have a viable future? Or are people just buying them in hopes of 100xing their returns? Many of those old IPOs and today's ICOs aren't about investing, they're about speculating. People just throw money at things and pray. You might as well just hit Vegas instead, and then at least you'll get a few comp drinks out of it. In my opinion, you should limit your riskier investments to a very small percentage of your portfolio, maybe 2 or 3%. Right now I feel that some folks are making the mistake of going too heavily into overly risky crypto. Sure, you'll hear stories about people that become multimillionaires by betting on some crypto thing or some penny stock or whatever. And yes, it's possible that could be you. But odds are you'll do a lot better by simply investing in great companies at reasonable prices. High risk can mean high return, but it can also mean high losses. Look at what's happening to Voyager, Celsius, FTX, BlockFi, and Gemini. You've got some bankruptcies, some inability to withdraw assets, etc. I actually had employees from a variety of those places reach out to me, wanting me to promote their products. It's crazy all the stuff I'm being asked to push these days, and those of you that follow me know that about 2 months ago I did a video where I mentioned that I turned down over 120 grand to promote a company's products and services on my social media platforms. And I'm a relatively small finance YouTuber. 120 grand is crazy. They did tell me I was being offered a package above the normal of what they'd offer a channel of my size, due to my dividend Discord being the best they had come across. Still, I can't imagine what the big channels are being paid. Anyways, when I dug into the details of the company that was offering me the 120k contract, I quickly realized that I couldn't, in good conscience, take their money. I thought the product frankly sucked, so I walked away, waving bye-bye to the quick cash. I avoid naming and shaming people and companies, though some subscribers figured out who I was talking about in that video. Bottom line, I won't promote something unless I'd use it myself. But I'm sure there'll be a time in the future where I'll promote something that'll end up being crap, because I make mistakes all the time, so don't blindly listen to me or to any YouTuber without always doing your own due diligence. I do feel that most finance YouTubers truly do want what's best for you, and anyone can make a mistake, but every so often I get disappointed when I find a big channel that pushes penny stocks or whatever, showing me that they're motivated more by money than by really helping their viewers do better. And that makes me cringe. You know what should make you cringe? Well, anything that has a crazy high return. Avoid the shiny objects and just wake up to the very real potential of slow and steady, conservative blue-chip dividend stocks. I desperately want everyone in the world to learn about how incredible and life-changing it can be to simply invest in quality companies for a long period of time. The way you can do so much better than the average person out there is to do what the average person isn't willing to do. The average investor quits when their investments don't immediately do well, but you shouldn't quit. The average investor thinks low yield is crap, but you know better. I literally just got a comment from someone saying I was stupid because my multi-million-dollar dividend portfolio only makes a few percentage a year from dividends. Of course, they aren't thinking about capital appreciation over time, nor do they look at how my passive income has been increasing over time, nor are they looking at a longer period of time, nor do they understand the needs of myself or my family, etc. Fortunately, we all know the power of quality dividends. We know that we could literally be the person who starts real generational wealth if we're able to keep investing and not quit. So make sure you avoid investing too much in hyper-speculative stuff like I did. Don't make that mistake. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. It doesn't matter who tells you otherwise. It's fine to watch channels on YouTube for entertainment value, but please realize that having a huge finance channel doesn't mean you automatically should follow their advice, just like having a small channel doesn't mean you should ignore the advice. Also realize that growing a big channel on YouTube can be a different skill set than growing your net worth from investing. So be smart. The higher the return, the higher the risk aren't just random words. It's what happens time and time again. I preach slow and steady investing because it's worked for me, but even that isn't guaranteed. Any company can go under. Still, among the various investing approaches out there, I feel pretty good about investing in companies that have been around for a long time and that have flourished. My companies might not shoot up, but they also tend not to go bankrupt. Look at all the crypto stuff that has crapped the bed. OneCoin, BitConnect, Gems, etc. Now, I do think that some crypto will survive and blockchain and such will be part of our futures, so coins like Bitcoin and Ethereum will probably make it, and a few others may truly flourish over the long run. Of course, I don't know that for sure, and I'd rather my kids invest the majority of their investable dollars in companies like Microsoft and Apple and Google and stuff like that. Anyways, after the dot-com crash, we disbanded our investing group, and some of those guys completely quit investing. Fortunately, I didn't quit, though it was hard not to walk away from stocks altogether. So your lesson here is that even if your portfolio gets decimated, I hope you don't quit, because a decade or two from now you'll be kicking yourself. Okay, another big investing mistake I made early on was to only focus on my investments and not my wife's. She usually had hourly jobs and worked less than 40 hours a week, and rarely was offered a 401k, and it just didn't occur to me to invest on her behalf. Then again, we were just spending money on travel and stuff like that. But don't forget about your significant other or your kids' accounts. Okay, another big investing mistake I made was when I took my foot off the investing accelerator after the dot-com crash. I kept investing in my retirement accounts, and I didn't sell everything and completely walk away, but I wasn't aggressively investing like I should have been. The best investors out there don't slow down or stop when they lose or when things crash. They tend to invest more during bad times if they can. Of course, that's easy to say, but very hard to do. The psychological impact of seeing your portfolio crash can be tough to deal with. And that's about when I started focusing on real estate, because the dot-com bomb shook me so much. I bought my first house around 20 years ago, and that's when I realized that I should have owned real estate all along, which is another big investing mistake of mine, i.e. not getting a house sooner in life. I remember when I was talking about buying a house, and an uncle of mine tried to talk me out of it. I really respected that uncle, and he was the cool one who got an Apple computer and let his nieces and nephews play games on it. He introduced me to programming, and he was a programmer himself. But he got so burnt out on programming that he eventually sold everything he owned and moved out to some communal farming thing on an island. Now he plays bongos on the beach and barters for food. Sounds crazy, but it's true. Anyways, he tried to convince me not to take on a 30-year mortgage because he regretted doing so. But I found a great deal on a house and had gotten married, and fortunately I ignored his advice. Owning houses has turned out to be a great wealth generator for me. A mortgage is like forced investing, and for my personality it worked out great. I've also seen people get too big of mortgages and they were miserable. I love that you could buy a house, live in it for a while, and then if you met various requirements when you sold it, you could avoid some or even all of the capital gains taxes on it. I've actually done that multiple times in my life, and you might have seen a video I did called Watch Me Buy 450 grand of dividend stocks, my $2 million portfolio, where all that money I invested came from the third house I had lived in and sold. So while I understand what Kiyosaki is saying when he talks about your house often being a liability, I personally think that most houses can be a great asset, even though they aren't putting money in your pocket every day. In my experience, they put big money in your pocket when you sell. Real estate has a ton of incredible tax benefits to be aware of, both in your house and in your rentals. Okay, my next big investing mistake came after I sold my first house and thus had a wad of cash to invest. And that's when I did a real estate deal with some close relatives without writing things down in a contract. I basically put up 150 grand and was supposed to eventually own some real estate that a relative owned, assuming I paid all the expenses on it and assuming I paid off another relative who had a partial claim to it. Things were looking fine for a few years until the main owner decided that the deal was off and no one was getting anything. It honestly blew my mind that someone you really cared for and trusted could totally go back on a deal and royally screw you over. But the guy who went back on his word had also gotten remarried to someone that was less than half his age, and I think she influenced him in a bad way. I've never been the suing type, so I just wrote off the 150 grand and learned a lesson. But to this day, it still stings when I think of how all my cash just poofed into thin air, and so I know how you might feel if you've lost a lot of money on something. Leave me a comment telling me your worst investment so we can commiserate. The obvious lesson I learned was to write things down in a contract, ideally one vetted by a lawyer, to protect you as well as the other parties involved. And then shortly after that mistake was another huge investing mistake on my part, which is when I invested $50,000 in a startup without really understanding all the details. It was in the ag space, and they developed this innovative patent-pending device for farming that looked like it could be game-changing for the industry. The CEO was a guy who had done a lot of business with an exec at the company I worked at, and I heard through the grapevine that he had a startup. I was still feeling burned by the dot-com crash, so diversifying out of stocks seemed compelling to me. Well, the startup lasted for a few years, but never made enough sales to really take off. And that leads to another investing mistake I made, which I literally only realized this year, which was that I never declared the $50,000 investment I lost as a tax write-off. So in a few months I'm going to talk to my tax guy to see if I can retroactively count it in my upcoming taxes. Anyways, another series of investing mistakes I made was about retirement accounts. The first mistake was that I only invested small amounts of cash into my retirement accounts until much later in life. I was young, was more focused on girls and cars than I was on retirement accounts. Thank God I invested any though. And another mistake I made pertained to Roth IRAs. See, Roths didn't exist when I started investing, and when I found out about them then I started one up. But then I made another investing mistake, which was that I decided I'd close it out. I mean, my traditional IRA was so much bigger, so it seemed kind of pointless to just put a few bucks into a new Roth, which was of course a stupid thing for me to think. I didn't know about backdoor Roths back then, and when I found out about them I didn't want to pay taxes to convert some or all of my traditional IRA. Okay, moving on. Another mistake I made for many years was lifestyle inflation. As I made more money, I spent more money. I got nicer cars, nicer houses, wasted more going out, etc. I think that spending some money is good, but looking back on my life, I wish I'd been more conservative. My dad was such a tightwad with spending that I probably rebelled and did the opposite thing once I had my own money. Fortunately, I kept investing some, but I could have doubled my current portfolio size if I had lived more frugally and invested more. So there you go. Those are my worst investing mistakes over the last almost 30 years. Now I'd like to tell you about a recent health procedure I went through, which is going to be TMI, but you need to hear it. So a couple months ago I saw this video where Ryan Reynolds did his first colonoscopy in hopes of influencing others to do the same. You could say he was leading from behind. I'd actually never gotten a colonoscopy before, and so that's what I did last Friday. The worst part of the whole process is the prep work, and specifically it was drinking 2 gallons of colon blow, whatever it was called. But I mixed it with white grape juice and it was easier to get down. Anyways, I was surprised at how smooth everything turned out, pun intended. I mean, you go to the hospital, they roll you into a room, you lie on your side and they put a mask on you, and within a few seconds you fall asleep, and then you wake up and it's all over. I literally couldn't even tell that anything had happened in the back door. Of course, when I told my friends that, they joked that it was probably because of all the practice I had, but seriously, it was like nothing happened. The doctor did find a couple polyps, which apparently is pretty normal, so they removed them while I was out, and now they're testing them to make sure they're benign. I'd show you pictures, but I'd probably get banned from YouTube. Seriously though, if you're 45 or older, male or female, then I strongly encourage you to talk to your doctor about if it would make sense for you to get a colonoscopy. Mine was seriously a breeze. I talked to a nurse who told me multiple stories about people's lives that literally got saved due to doing colonoscopies and finding issues early on, as well as stories of people who refused to get a colonoscopy and then died from cancer. I personally didn't have any of the commonly experienced symptoms that can mean cancer. Things like a change in bowel habits or changes in stool consistency or blood in the stool or abdominal discomfort. I just went in because I had never gotten one. Now you might be sitting there thinking, what does this have to do with dividends? And my answer to you is that if you want to make it big with dividend investing, then you gotta live for a long time, which means you gotta live, which means be smart and practice preventative medicine. If it's good for Deadpool, it's good for you. And on that note, I'd like to shout out my newest Patreon aristocrats who managed to sign up since my last video. If you're interested in getting access to my spreadsheet product and the other benefits of my Patreons, then go to patreon.com, search for Gen X Dividend Investor, and then if I have any seats open at the Aristocrat or King tiers, then sign up. And within a few hours I'll email you instructions on how to access my spreadsheet, along with we'll share some private tutorial videos on how to use it. I tend to sell out of seats quickly when I open them up, and I limit access due to the support I provide. So thank yous go out to Ricky H, Rigo Sundalo, Robert P, An Ordinary Person, Andrea C, Devil143, LensCap, ZTech Mike, and John B. Also thank you goes out to Average Joe, who signed up for an entire year so he gets a 10% discount. And thank you Dan, who signed up for an entire year. And Crusader6, who signed up for a year. And finally thank you Bamboozler, who also signed up for an entire year. Aristocrats gain access to my dividend portfolio tracker spreadsheet, which I use in lots of my videos, and they get special access to various private channels on my Discord, including one which lets you watch my videos before I release them publicly on YouTube, as well as lets you vote on which thumbnails I should use, and of course you get more direct access to me. They also get a shout out as you just heard, and I add them to my scrolling news sticker on my videos. Finally, I urge everyone to join my free dividend Discord chat server, which has thousands of dividend investors on it from around the world. Regardless of what you do, please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't yet, and click that bell notification. Thanks for watching, stay positive, and I'll talk to you again real soon. I am not a financial advisor, and these videos are for entertainment, inspiration, and educational purposes only. Investing of any kind involves risk. I am only sharing my opinion with no guarantee of gains or losses on investments.